So when I look at the world, there are a lot of things, a lot of trends that actually leave me pretty concerned. I see war, I see poverty, I see disease, I see environmental degradation, and I think the actual issue of survival as a species is somewhat at stake here, and certainly of our current way of doing things in civilization as we know it. What I want to tell you instead of that story, though, is a story of hope. That we within Nourish International, the story I want to tell you is what gets me up every single morning saying, wow, this trend is so exciting. How can I spread it? How can we get this happening as many places as possible, as quickly as possible? And that's the idea of partnering with the poor. Partnering with the poor has proven effective at eradicating localized instances of poverty within specific communities, sort of at the grassroots level. And it's also shown quite effective at having an impact on the people who go and form these partnerships, equipping them as lifelong change makers with the tools they need to have an impact on the larger issues of global poverty. So, I'm going to be, over the course of this talk, I'm going to first talk and tell you what is partnering with the poor. What does it look like? I'm going to illustrate that with a story. And subsequently, I'm going to tell you why this is awesome. And by the end of that, you're going to be so convinced that, yes, partnering with the poor is like atoms coming together, unleashing a ton of energy. How are we going to get it to spread? So, beginning with what does partnering with the poor look like? I'll start with what it is not. It is not a one-way charity relationship. One of the themes that we've had in these TEDx talks today are that with the Industrial Revolution, we started building systems that were open-ended, that you'd have a throughput, but it wouldn't be a cycle. And I think that's the way that we're approaching charity as well, where we have a person who is positioned as generous and not needing any help, as giving to this other population which is faceless, worthy of pity, and unable to give back. Rather, what we propose with Nourish International is a partnership with the poor, where we acknowledge the shared humanity of the people with whom we're partnering, and it's a series of face-to-face interactions on an eye level, and it's based in tenets of respect. And it's saying, you know your needs better than anyone else. You know how best to meet those needs better than anyone else. And it's saying, how can I support you in your efforts and the efforts of your community to advance your lives? So let me give you an example of what this looks like. This summer, a team of 5 UNC Chapel Hill students involved with Nourish International formed a partnership with the poor with a Turkish women's cooperative. And they went through a series of steps that I think really epitomize what an effective partnership looks like. And first of all, they identified a great partner. They were asking questions like, is this partner able to meet our needs? So can they host us? Are they going to be able to keep us safe? Are they going to be able to utilize our labor? But they were also asking questions of, is this an effective organization? Are they of the population being served? Are they having a profound impact? Are they trustworthy? And they found a fantastic partner. It's a women's cooperative in Turkey that was formed by women who were left homeless from a series of devastating earthquakes in 1999. And the next thing that they did, which was really good, is that they worked with the partner to identify what the partner's needs were. So they asked questions like, so what are your strategic priorities? And that was leading up to how might we be helpful, as opposed to coming in with an agenda of, here's what you need, and here's what we're going to do for you. What they found was that this women's group had a catering business that provided some income opportunities for its members, and that they wanted to expand the catering business, and they needed an industrial kitchen. And the women's group was fully capable of executing on this, except they had a problem. That the sources of funding and such were on the other side of this mountain range of different barriers. And there were barriers like gender and legal status and culture and language. There are all these things that made it difficult for the women's cooperative to tap into these funding sources. And so the Nourish International team said, well, actually, we're really good at bridging. We're really good at supporting communities and telling their stories. And that is what the collaboration ended up being between the team and the cooperative. So the next thing that the team did that was really good is that they built trust and relationships. So as soon as they arrived in Turkey, they ate ice cream. And they played with children. And they interviewed people locally. And they went to a Turkish wedding. And you would think, how does this relate to the work of bridging and the actual work plan that was needed to be done? But what we found with Nourish International is that unless you have a foundation of trust and relationship, any work that's done in partnership with the poor is going to be built, it's not going to be very effective. And so it was really good that they went in and very intentionally focused on trust and relationship building. Another thing that they did, which was really good, was that they strove to build the capacity of the organization with which they were partnering, as opposed to going in and doing all the work themselves. So they had strategic planning sessions with the cooperative and actually had voting on things like the new logo and on the creation of the website. And all of the technology work that they did, they were making sure that they did it in that members of the cooperative were there for those trainings and were getting up to speed on how to do those things. And the team brought a series of computers that they donated so that when the team was gone, the cooperative would still be able to do really basic things like update the brochure. And also, another instance of what was really effective with this partnership with the poor was that they were flexing with the needs of the partner. So the cooperative ran a daycare, and there was a family emergency of the person who was supposed to be watching over the children. And this had nothing to do with marketing. It was a distraction from the work that the team had gone to Turkey to implement. But the immediate need of the cooperative at that time was, we need somebody to watch over the kids. And so the team dropped everything and did that for a while until that need was met. And it meant that they had to be spending extra hours staying up late and all of that, but it was an example of the flexibility that's necessary. And then what we found with Nourish International is that the partners, that organizations that are composed of populations at the margins are much more susceptible to subtle fluctuations in their external environment. So something like a family crisis really throws things off. And so our people need to be prepared to flex. And this hard work paid off in really significant ways. They made connections with a Turkish representative of Nike who was able to divert some corporate social responsibility dollars. They made a video demonstrating the work of this cooperative and actually watched it with politicians in Turkey that they were able to get audience with, and then introduced the politicians to the cooperative. And those politicians were able to waive some of the fees associated with building the new kitchen and get land donated and things like that. And what happened is that they're now, like, any time now, these days, like yesterday, tomorrow, something like that, they're breaking ground on building this industrial kitchen, which is going to have a profound impact upon this circle of women who before the cooperative were homeless and are now, with the industrial kitchen, going to be able to have a major leg up for pulling their families out of poverty. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, so that was an example of what partnering with the poor looks like. Now I want to share with you kind of unpacking the layers of impact that this had. So we talked about the local impact, that the communities, the local instance of poverty within the specific community of the women's cooperative, for example, is dramatically reduced because of this partnership. But there was also a lot of other value that was created. There was a lot of social capital that was created, trust, which the World Bank has discovered is actually on par with financial capital for poverty eradication, because this Turkish group had this opportunity to coalesce around hosting this team that came and worked with them. And they felt so honored that a team from the United States would be spending their summer with them, wanting to have this exchange. But we need to, again, going back to what a partnership looks like, we need to look beyond just the impact of the people, of the poor. There's this idea of the two-way give, of the closed-loop system, that when you're in a partnership with the poor, you're not just impacting, but you're being impacted. And specifically, we're finding that our students are given two very key skills from these partnerships with the poor. The first is global citizenship perspective. When you have an eye-level exchange with someone that's different from you in terms of geography and national origin, ethnicity and language and access to power and wealth and all these different things, somebody who by all definitions is the other, and you have an eye-level connection and you realize, and you're laughing over somebody spilling the milk, and you realize, oh, they're just like me. That recognition of the shared humanity that we have across all people then combines with a heightened awareness from these experiences of unequal distribution of access to what people need to lead a dignified life. It creates a cognitive dissonance, the results of which we've found many times are people committing to a life of trying to make a more just world. And the other thing that we see arising out of these partnerships for the poor in the way that our students are transformed is that they get this really robust getting things done skill set. That they've planned and executed and evaluated a project with an international partner across a whole bunch of different divisions. They're getting team building, cross-cultural skills, and project management skills that are incredibly valuable for, at the end of the day, being a lifelong change maker with the tools you need to really make a difference against the big issues of global poverty. So hopefully by now, you're convinced, or at least somewhat persuaded, that partnering with the poor is a good idea. How do we spread it? How do we get as many instances of this happening as possible? And so it's unlocking value on a whole bunch of different levels. And there are a variety of organizations that are working on this challenge, doing great work. This is Nourish International's model. It starts with students. And they start businesses, and they form partnerships with the poor, both of which are activities intended to fight poverty in specific local areas abroad. Now, what you get from the starting businesses are some really interesting secondary effects. First of all, you get entrepreneurship skills and leadership skills, and as some of our speakers have mentioned, when you've got markets are powerful. And when students know how to harness the power of markets and the power of business to direct that and to connect that powerful engine to creating social good, that gets some really interesting things spinning. And secondly, that you see the arrow with the money going down. The ventures that our campus chapters create are generating revenue that can then be invested in these projects abroad. If there's a water project with a partner in Peru of installing a well and clean sanitation systems, maybe that's going to cost $5,000, $10,000. Because of the ventures, our students are able to bring that money to the table to make the collaboration happen. The other thing, as we'd already mentioned there, the cross-cultural skills and the global citizenship perspective that arise out of these partnerships with the poor. And these different skill sets combine into creating individuals who are incredibly equipped to make a difference over the course of their lifetimes on global poverty. But it's not just individuals, but it's an actual network. So there's mutual reinforcement and support within the network. These are the entrepreneurs and the social entrepreneurs that are collaborating with one another in the coming years. And what's great is that this network, in turn, reinvests in the movement. That they reinvest in the chapters which creates, again, a cycle as opposed to a throughput system. With a throughput system, you make an investment, then they graduate from college and they're gone, and so you need to continue making more investments. With a cycle, the dividends continue to be reinvested, and so the movement is able to grow. That's why we're able to be a movement of 25 US college campuses with 500 student leaders, 150 of whom have actual leadership positions. And we have a full-time staff of 2, plus a squadron of interns. There's a lot of energy going on within this network, but it's not dependent upon very much new investment coming into the network because it's a cycle. So that's Nourish International's model. And I've just bringing it back, as a species, we've got some serious challenges ahead of us. And I wanted to share a trend that gives me hope, so that I don't just fall into despair, and I can wake up in the morning and say, you know, there's this movement of partnerships with the poor happening, and it's growing, and I can be part of making it grow even faster. And that's really unlocking the potential. It's transforming communities. I've seen it happen, and I hear about it, and I read about it every day, and it's transforming ourselves, which in turn is transforming the world. All right. Thank you very much.